Just days after women were banned from universities in Afghanistan, the Taliban have now ordered all national and international NGOs to stop their women employees from working. The order from the Economy Ministry threatens to suspend the licenses of NGOs that fail to implement the directive. The order has drawn international condemnation, with governments and organizations warning of the impact this is likely to have on humanitarian services in a country where millions of people rely on aid. The Taliban justified the move, saying the women working with NGOs had violated the dress code by not wearing hijabs. The United States Secretary of State Antony Blinken has said women are central to humanitarian operations around the world. This ban will be devastating to Afghans, as it would disrupt vital and life-saving assistance to millions. The United Nations Chief's Deputy Special Representative for Afghanistan, Ramiz Alakbarov, has said this order is a clear breach of humanitarian principles. Aid workers say women workers are essential in a country where rules and cultural customs largely prevent male workers from delivering aid to female beneficiaries. While the Taliban had promised a softer form of rule when they returned to power in August last year, they have instead imposed harsh restrictions on women, effectively squeezing them out of public life. Afghanistan's struggling economy has now entered crisis mode since the Taliban took over in August last year, with the country facing sanctions, cuts in development aid and a freeze in central bank assets. According to Afghan Aid, a record 28 million Afghans are estimated to be in need of humanitarian aid next year. For more on this decision by the Taliban, we spoke earlier to Lynn O'Donnell, a journalist.
To be honest with you, I don't think that anything that the Taliban does to roll back the rights of women in Afghanistan should come as any surprise. Last week there was a lot of pearl clutching about the announced ban on women going to university, but they'd already banned girls from going to secondary school. So the natural corollary to that was girls who don't go to secondary school aren't going to be able to go on to tertiary education. I think that the ban on women working in the charity sector, both international and domestic, is really just the next step. And I think that the step that we'll see after that is women being forced to stay at home, not do any work at all. I mean, you know, it's been coming. The Taliban ruled Afghanistan between 1996 and 2001, and this is exactly what they did. We will open schools to girls when the time is right. And of course, the right time never comes. This is their own interpretation of Sharia law. They've never been held to account, and nobody has ever asked them to explain what their interpretation is. Misogyny is the bottom line. Well, as I mentioned, there haven't really been any consequences for any of the Taliban's excesses since they took control in August 2021. They were allowed to travel, and even though there are United Nations security travel bans on those members of the Taliban who are listed as terrorists, they can still be accepted at the request of one country only, so that they are able to go to Russia, for instance, to Iran, to Doha, to anywhere. Any UN member can make that request, to China. So really there aren't any reasons for the Taliban not to be acting the way they are. Now, you ask what can be done. Well, for a start, I think the United States could stop sending in tens of millions of dollars in cash, as it does every week by air. That's then handed over to the United Nations, which then hands it over to local charity groups, which are sanctioned by the Taliban, ostensibly for humanitarian relief. It doesn't get to the people who need it. People I know who work in the local charity sector in Afghanistan tell me if 50% of what is meant to go to people who are hungry and poor and in desperate circumstances actually made it to those in need, that would be a miracle. There has to be some level of accountability for that money, and at the moment there is not. I think what the Taliban are doing is pretending to the United States that they are interested in counter-terrorism cooperation, as the State Department in Washington calls it. And in that way, they are managing to pretend that they are part of an overall effort against terrorism. But the fact is that the Taliban are also hosting dozens of terrorist organizations in Afghanistan as a thank you for them fighting alongside them for 20 years until last August. Afghanistan has become, with the sponsorship of the Western community led by the United Nations and the United States, the world's center for terrorism.